So today we're going to talk about how to utilize a blueprint for success in your startup. And the reason why this is important today and why we're talking about it is that I see a lot of people, it's not that they're not motivated. It's not that they're not working hard. Oftentimes they're working probably harder than they need to. It's that they don't know what they should be working on for the particular phase of business that they're in because they're not looking at it like that, right? They're not building it out like, okay, here's the next things we need to do to get to this milestone in our business so that we can focus on other things. They're just trying to do it all at once, right? They're doing things that a Fortune 500 company is trying to do. They're trying to do it at the early iterations of their business and trying to just play keep up and juggle all these things, and it's just not an effective way to go about your business. So we're going to give you a blueprint today on what you should be doing and what your focus should be at every stage of your business. So let's talk about those stages are, right? I've broken this down into 3 phases, so it's important that you understand what these 3 phases are. Now, that all said, before I get into 3 phases, there are sub-phases within each of these, right? So I'm oversimplifying it for the sake of you kind of understanding this, but what you're going to find is as you go through it, there are different phases within each one of these phases, right? And so overall, this is going to apply, and it's going to help you. But it's not as simple as I'm making it sound. I'm definitely oversimplifying things, and I'm going to try to address that as much as possible. I just want you to have something simple you can take with you, you can apply and get results. So the 3 phases that I've really broken it down to are 3. All right, crawl, walk, and run. Okay, so crawl phase. Let's qualify that. Crawl phase is early iteration. Right, you're just figuring things out. Your company's just started. Probably not making money yet. Probably not generating revenue. Or if you do, it's like, hey, we sold one thing here, and 3 weeks later we sold something else, or maybe it's been a month since you sold anything, or multiple months since you sold anything, right? So you're probably still in your job. You probably can't support yourself with your business yet. Early stage, all right? So walk. You figured things out. You've got a decent sized small business, right? Maybe you've left your job now. Maybe your business is your full focus, full time, and you're not watching the bank get depleted, right? Maybe you're not blowing it out of the water. You're not, building your savings account through the roof, but you've got enough to support yourself, and you're covering your basic expenses for what you need, right? Run, 3rd phase, is you've now hit scale, right? You're growing, you're hiring, you're bringing on new talent, all the things that involve what it looks like when you're scaling a business, right? So each one of those, you're going to know when you hit that, but it's important that we know what you should be doing with each one of those 3, but I wanted you to know what those 3 were first before we address them. All right, so the crawl phase. So usually what that looks like and what it should look like and what you should be doing in the crawl phase, it's really, really important because I see so many entrepreneurs that are gung-ho and ready to rock and roll, and then they're flamed out in 6 months, and there's a reason for that. And it's that they're not providing sustainable means for themselves to be provided for financially, right? And they're expecting their business to just take off. Usually I tell them, however much you think you're going to make, cut it in half, and how much you think it's going to cost, double it. How much of a window do you have now? Because we're generally pretty optimistic, maybe overly optimistic in some cases. This takes a long time, all right? It takes a long time to figure out what works. So here's the 2 things I recommend you do. Either be a night or a weekend warrior, right? So what does that look like? You have a job, right? You still work full time. You're finding any time you can, maybe 7 to 8, right after dinner. Kids are doing their homework, whatever it looks like for you. Usually this is good for families, people that have mortgages and responsibilities, and their kids go to private school, whatever. They have real expenses, real responsibilities. Night and weekend warrior is definitely probably where you want to be. You keep your job, you keep that paycheck coming in, spending whatever time you can, 10 to 15 hours a week, maybe even as little as 5 to 10 hours a week, working on the business. Maybe it's building an audience, putting out, maybe you do consultation work. Maybe you're, I'll use this example a lot. Maybe you're a web developer, and so you're doing, on the weekends, you're taking on maybe 1 or 2 clients a month, right? And you just work on their sites on whenever you have time in the afternoons, on a Sunday afternoon, whatever you spend, 1 to 4, like that's your time every week, and stick to that schedule. So really, really important because it allows you to keep living the way you're living and not having to make crazy sacrifices, but also still growing your business, moving forward and learning so that you can make that transition. I'm going to talk about a unique way to do that makes you actually feel like you're building momentum towards your business here in a second. The next is side hustler, right? So I was a side hustler. This is really good for young people that don't have responsibilities, they don't have families. They have responsibilities, not the big responsibilities, right? Like they're not married with kids or have other people they're providing for, maybe a dog or a pet or some kind, and that's it, right? They have the ability to go live with multiple people. Maybe they have 3 roommates to kind of alleviate some of that burden of rent every month, or whatever the case may be. So with those people, what they're doing is they're working on their business full time, right? So that's what they do throughout their week. They're Monday through Friday. They're working on their business. But what they do though is they find other things they can do. Gig economy is fantastic for that. Uber, Airbnb, TaskRabbit, stuff that they can do. DoorDash, Uber Eats, right? Like things they can do on the side when they have time and they're not working on their business. That work well. So I've seen some people, mornings they'll Uber from like 7 to 9 in the morning, and they Uber from like 4 to 6. They work 4 hours a day. Maybe they're making 20, 25 bucks an hour doing that. And so that's $100 a day, right? And that's usually enough to like get them over the hurdle. I used to do some stuff like that too. I did promotional stuff with Comcast on the weekends. It's 25 bucks an hour. Refereed basketball games. We would sell stuff on eBay, cars and clothes and stuff like that. We'd flip on eBay. You just want to make sure that it's something that gives you enough to get by, right? You're going to have to make sacrifices to lower your expenses, but it's not consuming most of your time, right? You want to do the opposite of what the night and weekend warriors are doing. You want to do 10, maybe 20 hours a week. So you want to focus on things you can do on the side, but things that can make you a decent amount of change pretty quickly, so that you can focus fully on your business. Just know that those sacrifices will have to be made though, because you can't go live in the penthouse and expect to be growing your business. You want to make sure that you're setting yourself up for sustainability. The other thing you can do that I've seen people do is they'll work bar back, or they'll work at a door, at a bar, checking IDs and stuff like that. Really, really good way. I used to do that in college. With tips, you can do tremendously well. And the good thing is that usually they need you on weekends. So you're probably not working on your business anyways, right? So Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday nights, stuff like that, maybe one night a week. But it really gives you some flexibility, and they don't need you because they're probably not open crazy hours. They're probably just open at night, from X period of peak hours to whatever. So it gives you a lot of flexibility to be able to just work part-time, but really make good money. I would make $25 to $40 an hour doing that, even working doors. So it's a really good opportunity for you to maximize your hours that you do have, to be able to work on your business full-time. All right, so in line with the night and weekend warriors, one thing you can do that I really recommend is to do the work for someone else. I have a friend that did this. She has a fashion blog. It's really, really popular. It's called My Style Vita. You can bounce over and check that out when you're done here. Anyways, so she went and worked in the fashion industry. She worked for like one of the big fashion players, because here's the thing. It was building up her knowledge of the industry, right? It was building up her credibility, connections that she needed, resources, so on and so forth, so that she transitioned into her blog while she was doing her blog on the side. When that eventually took off, she was able to kind of transition over very seamlessly. So it didn't feel like she wasn't working on her business. It felt like she was going to school, right? Working on, school, learning what she needed to learn from her job to then apply to her business. So I've seen that work really, really well for a lot of people. Some people that actually dictates the business that they end up starting is something that's in line with what they've been doing, right, for a while, or maybe years at this point. So get a job in the industry and go bust your ass for them, right? Do whatever you need to do. Gary Vee just had a guy that did that, was working with him for a long time, learned what he needed to learn, and then now he wants to branch off and do his own thing. But he learned from Gary Vaynerchuk, like one of the best entrepreneurs you could learn from. So really, really awesome strategy. I've seen a lot of people deploy successfully. Or you can do the work as a freelancer or as a service provider. So a mistake that I see here, one of the bigger mistakes that I see here, is people don't want to roll up their sleeves, right? They want to go to the part where people are coming to them and buying their stuff and reaching out to them and whatever. Selling online products, scaling, growing, like selling to everybody all over the world, globally. And really what it takes is rolling up your sleeves at the crawl phase, rolling up your sleeves, getting face-to-face with people, going to networking events, doing what you have to do, doing the hustle work, right? Learning. The best thing you can do now is you're investing in knowing who your customers are and what they want, right? At scale. Because what you're going to be able to then do is take that, repurpose that. You're going to know them at such a deep, innate level that your marketing message, to be able to take that in the walk and the run phase, to scale that up, right? Because you're going to speak to them better than any of your competitors can. If you don't know that and you skip that phase, what I see with people's marketing is it's general and vague, right? They don't know their problems. They don't know their major pain points. And so if you don't know that, your message comes across as very general and vague, right? When you know that, you speak directly to those people, or those people that you actually want to work with. You learn that by rolling up your sleeves and doing the work as a freelancer, as a service provider. Whatever you want to do, I'd start there. All right, so don't try to skip the steps. I just said this, but really, really important to note that don't try to go from start to run, right? Embrace the crawl phase. It's really important. This is going to set the foundation for your company and really dictate the work you want to do, how you want to serve people, because once you start growing, you don't get that chance. In many cases, it's hard anyways, don't say you don't get the chance. You can pivot. It's just easier to pivot now and focus on what you want to do and how you want to do it, and how you want to deliver your services, whether it's an online offering or whatever, right? You're gonna be able to pick the modality of how you serve people now and who you serve, and the ways you serve them right now. This is a great place to figure that out. So when you do hit walk and run, you've already got that established. So it's really important not to skip the steps. Plus, again, I talked about before in terms of marketing and knowing your customer is, it's hard to know if you haven't done this work first. All right, so pro tip, Facebook groups. A lot of the freelancers I see that do well, they're lurking in Facebook groups. They're engaging, they're having conversations, usually hyper-local groups. I'm in Austin. A lot of people I've seen do this in Austin. They're in the Austin Startups group or whatever. They're answering questions. I've seen a lot of attorneys do this. Somebody will have a legal question about startups. Attorneys bounce in, ask them questions. Next thing I know, they got a consultation, right? You can see it. So it's a good place to have people kind of congregated in one area, right? Versus you chasing people around town. So it's a really good way for you to kind of continue to keep a presence, build a reputation. People start noticing that you're answering a lot of questions and this and that. It just consolidates your efforts. All right, so let's talk about the walk phase. So at this point, you've now figured out what works. You're scaling that, right? So you maybe still be a service provider. Maybe you're not doing what you ultimately, the iteration you want to be doing, but you're going to start to delegate out things that really aren't the things you should be focused on anymore, right? You're going to start to focus on the 3 to 5 things that you do really well and getting the rest of it off your plate. And I'm going to talk about how to do that. So you're going to be focusing on building a team. Probably not going to be rich yet, right? You're probably not going to be making a lot to where you can actually pay a salary, but there's other ways you can start filling those gaps. I'm going to talk about that in a second. But you're at a point where you're growing. You've maybe subsidized your income. This is definitely now your full-time thing, right? So this is all you're doing. This is your main thing. This is the main thing. So this is basically a continuation of what you've already been doing, just focusing on growing those efforts, right? So maybe now, instead of chasing people around in Facebook groups, maybe you have somebody doing that for you, right? You hire a virtual assistant that's doing that for you, answering people's questions or whatever. Or better yet, doing the administrative back-end stuff for you so that you can only focus on new leads and getting new opportunities, right? And they're doing the onboarding and the follow-up and the admin stuff that you can do that, right? You can focus on that in the sales, and that's all you do, not all the other stuff too. Or maybe they do content creation for you as well. So it's a continuation of what you've already been doing. It's just kind of sharing the load now with other people with the resources that you have available to you and the budget that you have to be able to spend on those people. So your role is going to shift to that of finding new opportunities and transitioning into the leader of the company. So those are the main 2 things you're going to be doing is, how do I lead this company? What are the next big opportunities? Starting to think about transitioning away from you doing all of the work to you now making your main objective and goal of, what are the next steps? How do we plan the future? What are the next big things we could do to grow our revenue channels or to increase our revenue streams, or opportunities that we could bring on that could help us hire somebody else, right? Those are the things you want to start focusing on, is being the leader and kind of future casting what could be. Don't get stuck in the hustle mode too long. This is really important. This is where I normally see people in burnout. A lot of people, what they do is they hang on at this phase. They've scaled up what they're doing and they're now making enough money to subsidize their income. They stay too long in the doing everything, hustling all over the place mode, and they don't want to let go of things, right? So even if you take a slight hit to bring on like a VA or a virtual assistant, or to outsource something to someone else, even if it means you have to kind of pull back on how much you're paying yourself, make sure you're provided for, make sure you're good. But if you have to pull back on that a little bit, so that you can take a leap forward, it's really important that you do that. Don't stay stuck in hustle mode too long. This really is where I see a lot of people burn out, and when I end up having to help them get out of burnout. So now you're also want to focus on creating inbound opportunities. So inbound opportunities is going to become your favorite word, right? So the best ways you can do that are content creation. You should be creating content and hustle, right? But it's not the main focus, just building an audience, building an email list in the crawl phase. Now you want to start focusing on really growing that email list, really getting people hitting your website. Maybe it's constant blog production, or doing a lot of YouTube videos like what I'm doing here. So you want to have people start finding you at scale. That's going to allow you to go from what you're doing before, right, just kind of making ends meet, to we have more opportunities than we know what to do with, right? So that's your main focus now, is how can we get people to find us instead of us having to find other people? So there's a lot of ways you can do that. It comes with building an audience, usually building content, searchable content online. Start putting money back in the business for ad spend, right? It could be $5 a day. One of the ads that I run is $5 a day, just a general goodwill ad, awareness ad to promote my podcast. Listen to the podcast, it's free, kind of thing. Costs me $5 a day, a cup of coffee a day basically, and it really grows our downloads. It builds our audience while we do what we need to do on the back end, and it just keeps every day just sends people there. And it might only be like 5 or 6 new people a day, but there's 190, almost 200 episodes right now. So there's a lot of content they can consume, which vastly increases our downloads, and it's every single day. So it ends up being hundreds and hundreds of people a month, right? Just new subscribers or new listeners to the podcast, and it's $5 a day. So small budget, doesn't have to be huge. Create awareness, build your email list. All right, so talked about this before, but here's where we talk about letting go of things. One of the main things you can do, I talked about virtual assistant, PhilippinesOnlineJobs.ph, I'll drop that below. That's where we hire our entire VA team, a really good resource. Another thing you can do is start outsourcing, is finding service providers. It doesn't necessarily have to be in your area. I see this mistake a lot. People think that when they hire someone to handle something for them, like an accountant or an attorney or CPA, stuff like that, which you might have already should have done prior to this point. Definitely the legal stuff before now in the crawl phase, depending how much money you're making. But payroll, stuff like that, HR, those are things you're going to want to outsource at the walk phase. People sometimes think that it has to be in their local market, right, in their geographic area. Some of the best people that I've worked with, they live on the other side of the country, right? Like, so find the best for what you need. For your budget, right? It doesn't matter where they are. But that's a good way to fill the gaps, figure out things that you shouldn't be doing anymore, but also you don't have the manpower in a VA or the expertise in a VA to be able to do that, and then find someone else to outsource to that can kind of fill in that gap so you can continue to focus on highest level of contribution. All right, so run phase. All right, so this is scale now. This is when you're growing and it's time to really start exploding the company, right? So the biggest thing you need to be doing here, the number one thing you need to focus on, is fully fleshing out your team, right? So your job is going to be talent acquisition. You want to put talent around you that is going to allow everybody to be running forward, right? To keep up with the growth. And the more that they can do that, the more you're going to grow, right? So that's going to be now your main job is to fully flesh out an A+ team. So you should only be involved. I know at Walk, we were starting to delegate away some things. At this point, at Run, it's imperative that you are only doing your highest level of contribution work, the things that only you can do, right? I talked to Jeff Hoffman, the billionaire founder of Priceline.com, and he was telling me about how he was scared about doing that, about only focusing on that and bringing on A+ talent, because some people are scared about that, right? About bringing on talent that's better than them at those specific functions, because some people on his team were like, well, he's not going to respect you because he can do this thing better than you. And he was like, yeah, but here's the thing. There's something that I can do that he can't do, and I'm the only one that can do it. So there's a mutual level of respect for each other's talents. So you want to make sure that you bring in the best talent possible around you, and you focus on the things that only you can do. So in Jeff's case, he was landing these major deals and building these relationships with people that they were like, how in the world did he get that opportunity? How in the world did he get that conversation? How in the world did he build that connection? Right? So just as much as you may feel like I can't do the work that they do, they're going to simultaneously have that. It's going to be transactional. It'll be back and forth, right? It'll be a mutual thing where they'll respect the things that only you can do. So focus on the things that only you can do. And at Run, that's your main focus. That's the one thing that you do, or the two things that you do in line with building culture and building a team. That's your focus. That's the one thing you can do better than anybody else. And it's probably going to be the thing you're most passionate about anyways, the thing you want to do. All right, so the biggest thing is you're turning up the volume. Really important here. When you hit Run, before you just take on any opportunity you can get, right? You're a business, whatever comes in the door, we're going to take it. We need to make money. Now the difference is that you need to discriminate between opportunities that are worthwhile to pursue and opportunities that are not, right? And you need to not take on opportunities that are going to eat into your bandwidth, but really don't bring home the bacon, right? They're not profit maximizers. They're not the best unique opportunities for you within the ideal client avatar that you want to work with. So that was the case for us. We had $130 opportunities coming in, but my average transaction was $750 to $800. So we don't have time for that $130 opportunity. Like, we'll give it to a competitor free of charge, right? Because you have so many leads coming in that taking that job, even though you're adding to your revenue, like, it just doesn't make sense, because that other opportunity made so much more sense, and it was higher profitability, right? Profitability is going to be your best friend at this point. But you can't serve everybody. Don't try to be everything to everyone. Serve who you serve, and focus on the opportunities that make sense for your organization. And the numbers will tell you what those are. All right, so eliminate bottlenecks is going to be your main thing. So in line with taking those opportunities, what you want to do is focus on the opportunities that make sense and then scale those opportunities up, right? Those are the main things that you want to focus on. In order to do that, you need to make sure there's no bottlenecks in that system, because if there is something coming in that's slowing that process down, right, you want to make sure that the rest of the system can run and it's not hindered by that one thing that's going on, right? So maybe it is your sales cycle, right? Maybe, or not even that. Maybe it's your deliverability at the end, right? The service that you provide just takes a long time. There's a revenue lag or whatever, right? There might be a variety of things, or better yet, onboarding, right? If by the time you hire somebody and get them trained and work for you, it's 4 weeks, that's a long time, right? If you have a business that has a lot of employee turnover, that's a long time. That's a lot of opportunity costs. You want to see what you can do to cut that down. So I talked about this before, but one of the things that we did was my entire hiring and training process was completely automated, right? So when people came in, the hiring process, it was a written online questionnaire. Then it went to a video that was a pre-recorded video of me, and they would answer the questions. It would me talk, you answer, right? So the candidate would answer, and we would watch the replay of that. But my part was completely recorded, so they didn't. It was called Spark Hire, so it allows you to have that interaction. But my part was pre-recorded. Once they passed that, watch the video, hit it, sends over to our onboarding, our HR team. They handled everything from there. So all we've done right now is watch a 5-minute video of their responses. We've seen that the test they took was graded, so they were already tested on that, told it wouldn't even pass them along if they didn't get a certain score. So if they got lower than a 70 on that written test, right, the way we built it out, our questionnaire, it wouldn't even pass them to do the question interview, like the interaction video. Wouldn't even send them to that. If once they did that and they did the video, we would have a chance to watch it, right? So if we hit yes, this looks good, sends their information over. They've already filled out in the written part of the application, sends it over to HR team, our outsourced HR party. They would do all of the things that they needed to do. Once they were done, it would actually redirect the candidate to start their training, which was all automated. It was all graded as well. If they had to get a 90 or better to be passed along, and that was all tested at the end. They would go through the training material and they were tested on it. They had to get a 90 or better. Once they were done with that, it would notify our team that they were ready for scheduling. So that process was completely contingent upon those people. What we would do is we would take an ad part of our ad spend and go towards new employees. So we would actually put ads out to apply for the job, take them through that process, so we could turn up and down the volume contingent upon how much talent we needed to hire. So it was completely put the ball in our court, but imagine how much one of those people would take, let alone if we needed to hire 10 people, right? So it was completely all automated, and that was a huge bottleneck that we eliminated from our system. So think about things like that. That was an employee-centric business, so that was our biggest hurdle, but there are things that are going to pop up in your business that require you to focus on a systems and processes at the point of your run phase, at the point of scale, are going to allow you to go from, oh my gosh, this is overwhelming, to, wow, we're thriving and I actually have more time than I had even at the crawl phase, like personal time. All right, so I talked about automation will be your best friend. Surround yourself with A+ talent. You're really going to crank up the ad spend here. This is where you're really going to focus on, hey, we've got a huge budget. It's growing, right? Like even if it's costing you more to acquire a customer, you have so many opportunities and you've streamlined that it makes more sense for you to crank up the volume on the actual quantity of business that you're bringing in. And that really helps too with knowing your numbers, knowing what the best opportunity is for you, because if your profitability is so much lower on another opportunity, and it costs you more to acquire that customer, you've now really cut into that margin, which means you have less money and you've used that same bandwidth, right? But if you have bigger opportunities that are higher profitability opportunities, you can spend more to acquire that customer and still be able to spend the money that you spend while still using the bandwidth you use for a small opportunity, if that makes sense. So make sure your team has the resources they need. This is going to be one of the biggest things you can do as an effective leader, and it's going to help build culture like crazy. So what you're going to want to do is have conversations with your team and really glean from them and learn from them. What are the things that you guys can be doing better as an organization? What are the things I could do to help you do your job better? How could I support you? They'll tell you, and they're doing the job every single day, right? So if they're the ones talking to customers, perfect. They know the customer better than you do at this point because you're removed from that equation, right? And sometimes some of the best ideas we've had for organization have been suggestions from our employees. And then it's just a matter of me figuring out how we'd actually make that happen. So for example, the hiring thing, A guy was like, I have no time. I'm spending 45 hours a week and it's still enough time to hire as much as we need. Like, we really need a better process hiring. Well, I came up with a system, the one I told you about. But the fact that he was the one that told me what the problem was gave me the ability to go provide a resource for him, which made him feel taken care of, which made it feel like that we care about his job, right? That we care about helping him, supporting him in his role, which allowed him to then spend way less time on the nonsensical stuff that he was doing and way more time on hiring and having conversations and making sure that he was tracking how our employees were actually doing versus just running around trying to get them hired, right? So really, really important. Your team's going to appreciate it. It's going to allow you, even if you feel like there's not enough on their plate now in terms of bandwidth, right? If you cut their 40 hours down to 10 hours, guess what? Now they got 30 hours for you to continue to grow, to scale up those efforts, so you have more flexibility to grow your business now because you've alleviated all that time from that person's plate. All right, so your number one job is to build culture at this point. Usually, and I have a video on culture, I'm going to link it below. Usually culture is derived from effective hiring, right? But making sure that you have a core set of beliefs that you believe in that are probably unique to you. It's who you are as a person. And that's going to be your number one thing, is reinforcing that. What's the mission? What's the core values? Do the people align with those core values, right? Is reinforcing that. The companies that have good core values are the ones that have low turnover, and the ones that the people that are there go to extreme lengths to make sure that the company, they believe in something deeper than just a paycheck. And that's so powerful. And that's where you see, again, the company at this point is going to grow beyond what you can do yourself, right? There's not enough hours in the day for you to do everything anymore. And so it's important that you have people that kind of are extensions of what you believe in. They share that belief with you so that the quality and the consistency of what these people receive or the product that they receive is the same whether you handled it or not, right? So you have a unified mantra that your company stands for. You making that known and standing for that and making that emblematic across the organization is one of the most important things you can do, specifically at the run phase when the company does grow to hundreds of people, right? That needs to, like Chick-fil-A is the perfect example. The experience from Chick-fil-A from store to store is very consistent because they have a culture they believe in that is pervasive across the country, and people know what they stand for. Their customers know what they stand for, the employees know what they stand for, and they buy into that. And honestly, in some cases, they take less money to work for Chick-fil-A because they believe so much in their values and their beliefs, which is really, really effective. And that means more than even the best training and service that you could provide, right? Just the culture alone can go that far. All right, guys, so that is all I had for you today. If you want more of this, make sure you bounce on over also and subscribe to my podcast, Entrepreneur Hour with Chris Michael Harris. That link is included below. Make sure you like and subscribe. Like this video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. We've popped these out, plus live streams of all of our podcast guests on a pretty regular basis on this channel, so we'd love to have you here to check that out. Also, make sure to grab all of our resources below. We have a lot of links and various things you can check out as it relates to this video, and I will see you guys in the next one.